Who are you? In what state or territory were you born? What is or was the color of your mother's eyes? Has something terrible ever happened to you? Did you like how you handled it? What did people think of how you handled it? How do you feel about how they feel? You don't have to answer this all right now. I'll give you a minute to think about it. A few years ago, I was catatonically bummed out. Life was a movie I was no longer in, and I lost all faith in my ability to participate in this world with you. I considered moving back home with my parents, carving out a corner in the basement, and waiting. I thought about the life I would lead, the friendships that would end, the ones that would never begin, the things I would never make, and the words I would never write. The more I thought about it, the more it became clear to me that anything, absolutely anything, would be better than that corner. Sometimes all we really need is a minute to think about it. Sometimes we take as much time as possible. Sometimes we'd be willing to lobotomize ourselves just to experience the hum of the machine finally fade. And where would that leave us? Fucking work, baby. Anyways, I'm talking about Severance and how everyone in this show is fucking miserable. I'm Andrew. I was born in Illinois. My mother's eyes are blue, and this is Severance and the Infinite Sadness.
Okay, yeah. Let's switch up the vibe in here.
While I'm not going to be going over every single thing about this show, I will be discussing several aspects of the characters Mark S., Helly R., Irving B., and Dylan G., so some spoilers ahead. Severance is a very popular Apple TV Plus original series starring Adam Scott and directed by Ben Stiller. I've always liked Ben Stiller, from Night at the Museum to The Royal Tenenbaums to the Meyerowitz stories. I had Meet the Fockers on DVD growing up, and I scratched that some bitch from overuse, but to see Stiller enter the serialized drama world was very intriguing to me, and I was left incredibly impressed, learning what kind of director he is. He's established his ability, and more so, his intention. Fearless in pacing, for these moments of silence, frames stuck in limbo, it felt trivial to not immediately acknowledge the craft. Severance tells the story of a small collective of employees working in the basement of Lumen, a mysteriously powerful legacy biotechnology company whose true business practices are so veiled that its own workers are not even keyed in on what it is they're doing every day. The employees in the basement, also known as the severed floor, have had their brains surgically severed. Get it? You already know this, don't you? Resulting in two different versions of themselves with their own realities and memories, having no clear picture of what the other one is doing or how they are. For obvious reasons, a procedure like this, both irreversible and controversial, attracts certain types of people. The damaged, the pained, the naive, and some other fourth thing. Everyone has a lot to say about this show. Its spotlight on work-life balance, the absurdity of office incentives, perks, and culture. The message that can be easily distilled, digested, and enjoyed by the large audience is work sucks, I know. But more indirectly begs you to reckon with the way you merit yourself in regards to morality, ethics, complicity. Where in the modern techno-capitalist world do you reside? How different is this world to your own? The near future genre is something of recent science fiction that is an increasingly successful setting to embed a dormant fear in the viewer. Is this where we're all heading? Its presence is not always a device to harbor fear, though, when done correctly, effectively builds a world that is both believable and grim. Through the first season of Severance, mysteries begin to unravel as the small team begins to question their surroundings, as different stimuli enter their labyrinthine office space, both planted by upper management and by their own internal discoveries. Outside in the real world, Mark is encountered by his coworker who he obviously does not recognize and is reluctant to embark in a conspiracy adventure when he'd much rather waste away. Mark's journey through the first season is a dichotomy of oneself, showcasing moments when cracks are formed, and one is able to experience the rare occurrence of being able to see yourself through the eyes of your other self. Once a history professor, Mark Scout now works as a department head for macrodata refinement on Lumen's severed floor. His wife Gemma was killed in a car crash that left him so utterly destroyed that the only way he could find to cope was to shut his brain off for 8 hours a day. Solace potentially found in the thought that there's a version of him doing something somewhere that doesn't feel that pain. A martyr act that self-serves an invisible beneficiary. The unknown you. Has something terrible ever happened to you? Did you like the way you handled it? I'm not one to tell you the right way to deal with tragedy. There's proactive measures, calm, calculated approaches, and there's harm and burial and burdening of weight. Seeing the world through Mark's eyes, there's little to be desired. A cold, unwelcoming, uninhabited subdivision he calls home, subsidized by his employer, seemingly uncaring of Lumen's hands stretching across all facets of his life. He finds a morbid simplicity in his arrangement, handing over responsibility of his life to be directed by wizened hands. His sister and her partner are his only tether to the world and represent to him everything that's out there. His encounters with tangential acquaintances reassure his choice to dig his heel in the sand. What did people think of how you handled it? How do you feel about how they feel? Grief is a powerful thing. It can take the wheel when it knows you're unfit to drive. It just isn't always going to take you where you want to go. As Mark spends more time with Petey, his supposed best friend from work, Petey enlightens Mark that whatever that sadness is, he carries it with him. He just doesn't know what it is. While Mark is seen by his loved ones as a deeply fractured person, there's a founded respect and care for him. Support is given to him in his time of need, though his time of need has coursed through years, and it's starting to seem that Mark likes to be broken. A fluid and steadfast change occurs in Mark's character throughout this season, in which he seems to become more and more willing to try. At work, his ability to begin questioning his surroundings, the reason for Petey's disappearance, the unexplainable oddities, and the mystery of the other departments, sparks a liberation and an evolved sense of togetherness. At home, Mark continually attempts to try at least seem like a person, going on dates with Alexa, his sister's midwife, somehow managing to not instantly scare her away with his general malaise and then rare, manic, explosive passion. In the second half of the season, there's a feeling in the air that Mark is finding a little bit of clarity, as if the rain cloud he'd been following is beginning to dissipate. It's clear that somehow Mark has rediscovered the ability to try. He now faces a growing and festering problem, a problem that can only be destroyed by fierce fire willing to burn everything down. At least he doesn't have to face this problem on his own. Our first glimpse into the world of Severance is grounded by the introduction of Helly R, who is just as green to this environment as we are. Our shared confusion of our surroundings drifts quickly as Helly's curiosity lasts much less than our own. It's apparent early on who Helly is at her core. She's a person who knows what she wants, and though she doesn't know who she is, her personality shows itself right away as she exhibits qualities like leadership, disobedience, and inability to conform to a structure that she finds herself at odds with. Helly's hired to replace Petey following a sudden and unexpected departure. As she's guided through her initial orientation, she's asked seemingly basic questions that are specifically designed to measure the success of her surgery. What is or was the color of your mother's eyes? Do you remember the things you're meant to? Do you remember the things you shouldn't? The newborn Innie Helly is smart enough to recognize her surroundings as something worth leaving, by any means necessary. As her attempts to resign are continually thwarted by the mysterious unknown her, similarities between Helly's inside and outside versions of herself are identifiable as a powerful presence of determination. But that determination, which potentially could have aided Helly's life prior to this, is now a weapon being used against herself. To have a fire burning inside yourself and to have yourself routinely douse the flame. More and more, Helly feels like a prisoner, surrounded by the cell walls that she's constructed herself. Why am I doing this to myself? How could I do this to myself? Who am I out there? The picture we see of Mark's life gives way of the kind of conditions required to lead someone towards this job. We don't know why anyone else has chosen this, we assume for equally sad reasons, encouraging a mindless escape. As with Helly being the most recent addition, along with her Audi's steady declination, her presence is at the forefront of questions needing answered. We find out within the final moments of the season who Helly is. An identity and a fire so ingrained in her that its leaking into the workplace was as inevitable as it was crucial. Irving B and Dylan G, two of my favorite boys. This office just would not be the same without them. They are as quintessential to the mythos of their mission as they are to its dismantling. Dylan G is a very simple character to understand upon first introduction. He's a workaholic, he's all about office incentives, prizes, awards, egg bar socials, things that are coveted as fuck. Irving B is also an easily digestible presence at first. He's a stickler for the rules, vibes heavily with the literature. If he was at Jonestown, he'd be paramilitary. Both Irving and Dylan have carved out a comfortable headspace in which they can work. They don't have the responsibilities and routine managerial contact like Mark, nor the psychosis-inducing freshman jitters like Helly. If things never changed, Dylan G and Irving B would be fine. Why they are here, though, is unclear. With Mark as an example, assuming the worst and analyzing their workplace behavior, they appear to be two people that fundamentally need to assign purpose to their life. And if their life is here, they will covet and praise what's provided. As Irving pounds his fist into the pages of his prescribed dogma, reciting passages to dispense wisdom, questioning not the weight of the words but the aim of his listener's ear, he meets Bert G. And like anyone's first love, it's all he can even think about. A man once so preoccupied with his mission and doctrine is now sneaking off to be with his sweetheart. As the team interacts with the newfound department more routinely, Dylan, being incredibly loyal and protective of his clan, keeps his cards close to his chest. Though one literal card he shouldn't have held ultimately exposes himself to a reality he was not equipped to witness, now knowing the existence of his son and that he's a father. Being unable to focus on anything else, demanding to know his son's name, Irving witnessing Bert's farewell, souring his relationship with Lumen, it seems like things have changed. Now, with factors relieving themselves of their duty, the whole team can now work together to figure out what the fuck this even is actually. They know that whatever caused Dylan to wake up in his closet could be used to find some answers. Tell people on the outside what's going on, or at the very least, see how the other half lives. Throughout the series, we observe these characters slowly wake up from their sedation, at each individual's pace, harboring questions that fester until action is ultimately required. What is beautiful in this season, and what makes satisfying television, is that these characters become a united front, willing to act out a risky plan to gain a sense of footing against their opposition. Everyone knows something is wrong, but it takes a personal problem to occur for them to rebel. For Irving and Dylan, two individuals that were once satiated with the provided articles of worship, now restricted and sanctioned from feeling emotions that which make us human, have become unplugged and ready to burn this fucker to the ground. As Petey's disappearance and Helly's arrival fracture Mark's stability in his environment, discovering illogical anomalies, having a growing concern for the treatment of his peers, and allowing Helly's perspective to begin changing his fear of punishment subsides as a mediocre hero complex takes shape inside someone that doesn't even fully grasp how monumental it is for them. Dylan sacrifices himself for the betterment of his peers to give them the window he had no choice but to look through himself. Irving learns both the impossibility of his infatuation and the magnitude of his other self's torment. Paint it black, Irving. Surely whatever it is you're releasing from yourself on each canvas isn't leaking its way into work. I'm sure your innie is just fine. I'm sure your innie is just fine. I'm sure your innie is just fine. In the final moments of Season 1, left on what might be the biggest cliffhanger I've ever witnessed, I'm sure you felt the same as I did, that this show is amazing, and not nearly enough questions were answered. It's been quite some time since the finale aired, and since then I've had a lot of time to think about Severance. I've rewatched it a couple times, and a couple months ago I decided I wanted to make a video about it. About how it impacted me. How exemplary it was. How excited I was for Season 2. As I began rewatching it for the purpose of this video, I just couldn't get some things out of my head. What are you supposed to do when you're sad? How do you measure mental growth? If enough things have happened to you, how many things will it take to counter the weight? How long does that take? Are things going to be better in Season 2? I don't think so. I think the plight of Mark S. is the infinite sadness. I see it in everyone, actually. And though there's several aspects and characters of the show that I did not cover, I think that sentiment bears some validity. And more so, even with that sadness and the strain it takes to carry it, even when its shadow is cast and you can't see the light, the most important thing you can do to carry on is try, and to keep trying. Measure your effort, find your reason, go forth, and eventually it might get better. Regardless, I'll be here to watch to see what happens. And I'll cheer you on if you cheer me on. I'm Andrew Marzen. Thank you for watching my video.